Hey guys, James here with Waterford Business Solutions. In working with contractors, there's generally a lot of equipment that gets involved with just doing some of these jobs. For our plumbers, a lot of times we'll end up seeing backhoes to dig pipes or dig up septic tanks or place septic tanks. For HVAC, we'll have to see a lot of cranes. For electricians, we may have trenching machines, just like we would with plumbers. If we're getting into landscaping, there's a myriad of different things there that we could see being used. Same thing with pressure washing or house washing. There's a lot of different things that we could see occurring equipment wise. And just like vehicles, there's always the $1 million question of rent versus lease versus buy. And so that's what we kind of want to talk about today. More so leasing versus buying, but we're going to quickly kind of also talk about renting of equipment and what makes sense and when it makes sense there. So when we're looking at equipment, renting is going to be kind of the simplest and easiest way. It's something you're not going to need for long. It's not something that you're going to be using generally super often. A lot of times with like our HVAC contractors, they may have a job that is more of a commercial job that they've got to get a unit up on top of a building. So they hire a crane for a few $100s or maybe a little over $1,000 to get the old unit off, get the new unit on. They've got the crane for an hour or two and then they move on. They're not using this equipment often enough to make it worth investing the money in having that piece of equipment on their own and maintaining that piece of equipment on their own. Most of the time, we'll see that with something like cranes and HVAC. Maybe we'll see it with backhoes or something like that, depending on what you're doing kind of under the plumbing side with the backhoe or how often you are doing stuff. If you're doing a lot of septic tank work, you'll probably own one or lease one, whereas if you're mainly doing interior stuff, you might rent when needed. Renting's obviously going to be a little bit more expensive because, well, they've got to buy that equipment, maintain that equipment, pay for that equipment, and you are basically just covering those costs for them and making them a profit. So it's going to be the more expensive option. But if we are not regularly using the piece of equipment, it may not make sense to invest your own funds into buying or leasing a piece of equipment. Now, leasing is kind of a good in between. You don't own the equipment. At the end of the lease, generally that lease is going to, or that piece of equipment is going to end up going back over to whoever you're leasing it from, and you don't have to worry about the diminished value. You don't have to worry about depreciation on it. You just have to worry about basically keeping it in good condition. And some leases may even include a maintenance clause in it, because I've seen where there's leases where they'll include covering the maintenance, bringing it in for regular service, everything like that, that you can get through some suppliers like Kubota or John Deere or something like that, where the tractor lease will actually include the maintenance of the equipment too. So that can be a good way to give yourself a consistent payment for that piece of equipment, with the understanding that at the end of that lease, you're not going to be any further along. You're not going to have that piece of equipment to lay back on. You're not going to have any type of reduction in expenses, because if you need that piece of equipment again, you'll have to start a new lease, or you'll have to rent, or you'll have to buy at that point and go through whatever process that looks like. Now, there are some leases where it's a buyout lease. Typically, the lease is going to cover whatever the payments are, and at the end of the lease, you'll pay like $1 to buy out the lease, and then you'll own that piece of equipment at the end of the lease. Most of the time in those cases, it's really working just like a purchase agreement, just generally at a little bit of a higher interest rate. Instead of going and getting a loan for a 3, 5, 6, maybe 10% loan, you're doing a lease, and the lease will have maybe an extra 1%, 2% in there that it's easier to get because it's 100% secured by that piece of equipment. The person taking it on or taking on that lease and that financing has more of a secured interest in it. So it's easier to get, but they're going to charge a little bit more at the same time. That is another lease option. Little bit more expensive still than full on buying, but at least at the end of this lease option, you will have that piece of equipment that you can own. Now, with leasing, any type of leasing, those lease payments are expenses. You're not going to get any tax benefit out of the equipment. You couldn't use Section 179. You couldn't use any type of bonus or special depreciation, 100% depreciation, anything like that. When we're talking a lease, your expense, what you spend in a given year, that is going to be what you are paying for or what you are able to deduct on your taxes. Nothing more, nothing less. It is exactly that. You also don't have any asset on your balance sheet until you have an option where you buy out that piece of equipment. Now, if you buy out that piece of equipment, then you can actually put an asset on your balance sheet, but ultimately you may have a balance sheet that doesn't look quite as good because you've got less assets, less money in the company because you don't physically own this piece of equipment. You're leasing it. So it's got some negatives from a books perspective and from a tax perspective, but it does give us a consistency on what exactly you are spending every single month, which is where the pro of this is coming in. So you've got to weigh, what do I want on my taxes? How do I want my books to look versus kind of the costs and everything and or the effort to get that piece of equipment. Because if you're trying to finance a piece of equipment, that could be a lot more difficult than if you were just to lease the piece of equipment. That kind of leads us into buying or financing. Benefit with buying, you have an asset on the books. You can depreciate it however you want, whether it's eligible for Section 179, whether you can use the 100% bonus depreciation that is now reenacted after the Big Beautiful Bill, whether you depreciate it under the normal depreciation standards. You have those choices that you don't have when you're leasing. You also can take a loan out, or if you've got the cash, you can just pay cash for it up front. So if you don't like having or owing money to someone, buying's going to be the best option here. I know I've got several clients that are adverse to any type of debt. So buy the equipment outright. Now you've got an asset, but no liability on that. You own it outright. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, typically with buying, you may be able to buy a maintenance plan with the equipment, but it's rare that you are going to get maintenance included. So keep in mind, if you're buying, you are going to have to maintain that piece of equipment on a regular basis for yourself. So that's another thing that we got to kind of look out for and keep in mind here. Now, on the buying side, you could either pay cash, like I said, or we could choose to finance it. Finance is generally what a lot of people are going to go with. And typically speaking, depending on your credit and everything else, you're going to be able to finance at a lower rate than you could lease. But you may have a shorter term, so the payments may be higher there. Again, it depends on your credit. A lot of equipment financing I'll see only be for 3, 5, maybe 7 years, whereas I'll see leases of equipment go into the 7 to 10 year range. I don't per se recommend doing that, but from a financial or from a financing standpoint, it can keep your monthly payments lower if that's what you need. Finance is also generally going to be a little bit harder to get. A business can get a lease on its own, typically without a personal guarantee from the owner, but getting a financing for something, you may need a owner's personal guarantee on there. So you've got to weigh whether you as the owner want to be guaranteeing and making sure that something's going to get paid there. So that's another little consideration that you've got to put in there. It's also a situation of financing. They're going to probably want a bit more information. They're going to want more P&L information, more bank statement information, more details, etc. there to better understand that your business can pay for it. Because while the equipment's still generally going to secure the loan, it's a little bit of a different legal situation and harder to get that piece of equipment back if you default on the loan. So they're going to be a little more rigorous in providing the financing here under a buy finance situation over a lease buyout situation. So another thing you got to look out for there, might take a little bit longer, take a little bit more time for you to do everything. So all little things to consider there. But at the end of this finance, that equipment's yours. Whether you want to use it for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I mean, I've got people that I know that have dump trucks that have been on the road for 20 years, that have backhoes that are 25, 30 years old, and they maintain it. As long as you maintain it, keep it clean, keep the hydraulics in a good position, a good piece of equipment can last you years. And long term, while you might have more expense up front with paying for the financing and everything there, eventually you're going to have more cash flow at the end because you're going to get that paid off. So most of the time, a finance is going to be the best option as long as you're planning to keep an asset for a long term and not planning to constantly be upgrading, getting new ones, or anything like that. I hope you found this informational and want to find out more about subjects or financial situations just like this. You can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications, and also like the video and leave a comment or share the video with anyone you feel that may benefit from it. We put out videos every single Monday to help you better understand your financial situation and your business, and being subscribed can help you become a master of your own finances. If you need help or you need a better understanding of where your business is at, we're happy to help you with that here at Waterford Business Solutions by going ahead and doing an initial consult, helping you get an idea of a baseline with your business or whatever financial situations you may feel you need. Give us a call to talk about what we can help your business with, either at 864-351-0852, or shoot us an email at info@waterfordbusiness.com, and we'd be happy to help you out there.